Who was the King of England in 1216? If you said King John, you're wrong. He was dead. If you said Henry III, you're kind of right, but also wrong. The answer nobody knows? King Louis of France. Yes, you heard that right. For over a year, England was ruled by a French prince who controlled London, Winchester, and over half the kingdom. He was proclaimed king with massive celebrations.
You are England! Each and every one of you, England is you!
Barons bent the knee. Even the King of Scotland swore homage to him. And yet, history forgot him. Today, we're uncovering the story of the king England erased from its history books. Louis VIII of France, the Lion, the forgotten invader who came this close to permanently changing British history. To understand how a French prince ended up ruling England, we need to talk about one of history's most hated kings, King John. By 1215, King John wasn't just unpopular. He was despised. His nickname? Lackland. Even his own brothers couldn't stand him. His father, Henry II, barely trusted him with anything. And when his brother Richard the Lionheart went on crusade, John tried to steal the throne. But the real disaster started when John became king in 1199. Within 5 years, he'd lost almost every French territory England controlled. Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine, all gone. The English barons were furious. Many of them owned lands in France, and John just lost them all. To make matters worse, John needed money. Lots of it. He wanted to reconquer France, so he squeezed his barons dry with excessive taxes, confiscated their lands on a whim, and threw people in prison without trial. There were even rumors he tried to seduce barons' wives and daughters. The barons had enough. In June 1215, they forced John to sign the Magna Carta at Runnymede, that famous document limiting royal power that would become a cornerstone of democracy. Finally, the tyrant king was constrained by law, except John never intended to honor it. Within weeks, he secretly wrote to Pope Innocent III, asking him to cancel Magna Carta, claiming he'd signed it under duress. The Pope agreed, declaring the charter null and void. By September 1215, John was attacking rebel barons' castles with mercenary armies. The barons realized they had a problem. They'd tried controlling John. They'd tried limiting his power. Nothing worked. They needed something more drastic. They needed a new king. But who could replace a king? John's son Henry was only 8 years old, hardly inspiring. John's nephew Arthur had mysteriously disappeared years earlier, widely believed murdered on John's orders. The barons needed someone strong, experienced, royal-blooded, and, critically, someone with resources and an army. They looked across the English Channel and found their man, Prince Louis of France. Louis wasn't just anyone. He was 28 years old, a proven warrior with a fearsome reputation, nicknamed the Lion for his courage in battle. He was the eldest son of King Philip II, the very king who'd humiliated John and conquered his French lands. But here's the twist. Louis actually had a legitimate claim to the English throne. He was married to Blanche of Castile, John's own niece, making him a direct descendant of Henry II. And since he was married to Eleanor of Aquitaine's granddaughter, he could trace his lineage back to William the Conqueror himself. More importantly, Louis was everything John wasn't. Contemporary chronicles describe him as honest, just, moral, and a man of his word. The barons saw him as their savior. In late 1215, a delegation of English barons traveled to Paris and offered Louis the throne of England. He accepted immediately. Why wouldn't he? His father, King Philip II, was in robust health with no signs of dying anytime soon. Louis was an ambitious prince in his prime with potentially decades to wait before becoming King of France. Here was a chance to conquer a kingdom of his own. There was just one problem. Both his father and Pope Innocent III told him absolutely not to invade England. Louis didn't care. He gathered a fleet, assembled an army, and in May 1216 set sail for England. On May 21st, 1216, Louis landed unopposed on the Isle of Thanet in Kent, with an invasion force of 1,200 knights and around 700 ships. When word spread, King John did what John did best. He fled west rather than fight. Louis marched triumphantly toward London. Town after town, castle after castle surrendered without resistance. About half the barons immediately flocked to his banner. The people welcomed him with open arms. On June 2nd, 1216, at Old St. Paul's Cathedral in London, Prince Louis was proclaimed King of England with great pomp and celebration. Though never officially crowned, that would have required the Archbishop of Canterbury, who refused to participate. Nobles lined up to swear homage to him. Even King Alexander II of Scotland bent the knee for his English possessions. Within weeks, Louis controlled Winchester, over half of England, and parts of southern Wales. The future looked bright for King Louis. There was just one small detail. He'd been excommunicated by the Pope. Didn't matter. He was winning. By October 1216, England seemed his for the taking. And then King John did the one thing that could save his legacy. He died. On October 18th, 1216, John died of dysentery at Newark Castle. You'd think this would be Louis's moment of absolute triumph, right? His greatest enemy was dead. Game over. Wrong. John left behind 5 children, including his 9-year-old son Henry. The remaining royalists moved fast. Within 10 days, on October 28th, little Henry was crowned King Henry III at Gloucester Abbey. They used a necklace as a makeshift crown since the actual royal regalia was in London, Louis's territory. And here's where everything changed. Suddenly, Louis wasn't the heroic foreign prince saving England from a tyrant. He was a foreign invader attacking a little boy. The propaganda practically wrote itself. The barons who'd originally supported Louis faced a moral crisis. They'd rebelled against John because he broke laws and abused power. But a 9-year-old, what laws had he broken? The boy was innocent. Many barons had another realization. Louis, man of principle that he was proving difficult to control. He wasn't going to be their puppet. He was going to be their king, with all the authority that entailed. Suddenly, a child they could manipulate seemed more appealing than an experienced warrior they couldn't. Louis watched his support hemorrhage. Baron after baron switched sides, returning to the royalist cause. Making matters worse, Henry's regency government was brilliant. They appointed William Marshal, literally described as the greatest knight that ever lived, as regent. Marshal was 70 years old, universally respected, and had served 4 English kings with legendary loyalty. In November 1216, the Regency government reissued a revised Magna Carta in Henry's name, removing the controversial clauses John had hated. The message was clear. We'll give you the reforms you wanted. You don't need a French king. Louis's coalition was crumbling, but the lion wasn't giving up. He held London, he held the southeast, and he still had a significant force. His father in France refused to send reinforcements, but Louis dug in for a fight. In May 1217, everything came to a head at Lincoln. Louis had divided his forces, half besieging Dover Castle, half besieging Lincoln Castle. William Marshal saw his opportunity. He gathered approximately 400 knights, 250 crossbowmen, and a larger force of soldiers, and marched to Lincoln. On May 20th, 1217, the Second Battle of Lincoln began. Picture this. William Marshal, 70 years old, leading the charge himself. The Royalist forces broke through the North Gate. Crossbowmen took position on rooftops, raining bolts down on the French and rebel forces. Marshal's knights crashed into the siege lines. The French commander, Thomas Count of Perche, was offered a chance to surrender. He refused and died fighting. The battle lasted 6 hours. It was a massacre. Louis's northern army was destroyed. His nobles were captured. The surviving forces fled back to London. The city of Lincoln was sacked so thoroughly it became sarcastically known as the Lincoln Fair. Louis still held out in London, waiting for reinforcements. His wife Blanche, every bit as formidable as her husband, had raised another army in France and sent them across the Channel. On August 24, 1217, those reinforcements arrived and sailed straight into disaster. At the Battle of Sandwich, English ships led by Hubert de Burgh annihilated the French fleet. The reinforcements never reached Louis. The war was over. On September 11, 1217, the Treaty of Lambeth was signed. The terms were surprisingly generous, proof of William Marshall's wisdom. Louis had to renounce his claim to the English throne and admit he'd never been legitimate. He had to withdraw all forces, give up remaining castles, and promise never to invade England again. In exchange, the English granted amnesty to rebel barons and paid Louis 10,000 marks, essentially paying him to leave. They also confirmed Magna Carta and the Charter of the Forest. Louis returned to France. His brief reign had lasted approximately 17 months, from June 1216 to September 1217. But here's the thing, he wasn't defeated in spirit. He'd held London, controlled half of England, and been proclaimed king by English barons. In 1223, when his father Philip II died, Louis finally became King Louis VIII of France. And he was a good king. A great king, actually. He expanded French territory, led the Albigensian Crusade, and strengthened the monarchy. He ruled France until his death in 1226. But in England, England forgot him entirely. History books list English monarchs in a neat line: John, then Henry III. No gaps, no asterisks. Louis VIII's reign simply vanished. He's been called the King of England nobody has ever heard of. And yet, for over a year, he controlled England's capital, commanded its armies, and received homage from its nobles. The Treaty of Lambeth specifically says he wasn't legitimate, because the English needed to legally erase his claim from history. The Battle of Lincoln might be one of the most important battles you've never heard of. If Louis had won, England would have become a French kingdom. There'd be no separate English monarchy, no War of the Roses, no Tudors, no British Empire as we know it. The entire trajectory of English and world history turned on a 70-year-old knight leading one last charge. So the next time someone asks about medieval English kings, remember, there's one they'll never mention, the forgotten French lion who almost changed everything. If you enjoyed this forgotten story, check out my video on the secrets of the Ice Age, and let me know in the comments, what other forgotten historical figures should I cover next?